So what I do is a small recap if everyone's ready, and if Gutorm shows up or catch him up as we go. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the company, they stumbled out of the rift after losing, or out of the rift and then out of Davokar after losing Agramar and Adela, and they essentially continued southeast towards the camp, which sits at the bridge over the Malgomor along the path or road to Karvosti. They came upon an altercation between two barbarians, or at least they saw one barbarian who was off his horse with his spear lance drawn, and then obviously a witch suddenly appeared, and that altercation didn't last very long. The barbarian who they eventually meet, whose name is Lothar, had no choice, and the witch, despite being maimed and bruised and battered for whatever reason, attacked him outright and ultimately met her end by Lothar defending himself. And so the group met Lothar, who's a barbarian horseman for some reason riding up the Malgomar or in this area, and they decided to follow or investigate a trail which the witch had left as she had crawled out of the forest, out of Davokar, and they decide to follow it. They follow it until it kind of comes to a stream, and they hear rough voices. They lose the trail itself, but they hear these rough voices in the forest, and they cross the stream, and they get a little separated. Gutorm kind of goes up on the rise or the ridge of a small little rise from the stream bank, and kind of gets a little bit separated from the group. But they eventually meet a group of barbarians who are somehow getting ready to either torture or put to fire a giant colossi, which are usually connected to witches. These giant kind of constructs made out of organic matter, trees, stone, things of the forest. Kai enters the clearing somewhat abruptly with purpose, and battle ensues. Gutorm helps free the colossi by shooting his bindings, because the colossi was roped and tied down to the ground as these other barbarians were hacking at it with axes and lighting a torch. And eventually the group comes to combat with the barbarians as Kai rushes out, and they survive. The colossi is freed and assists in essentially stomping down on some of these barbarians, but one barbarian does escape, and the colossi then turns and tromps back through the forest towards the Malgomor River and finds the witch that Lothar had killed. The colossi picks the witch up, or the lifeless body of the witch, and settles her in the crook of one arm, and then walks or hobbles back, because one of its legs is partially destroyed, back towards the forest, back towards kind of the north into that forest, as the group kind of stands at the edge of the Malgomor River. Anyone have any questions about that?
Not I.
Yeah. So you're at the edge of the Malgomor River. Kai, Gutorm, Lothar, Hagen. Kai, you rushed into combat. You kind of pushed the action, really. You just entered. Perhaps that's what elves do, or seeing the colossi. Do the others know why you did that, or what you were thinking when you rushed into combat, or rushed to the colossi's aid?
Aid is a strong word for Kai's next pet. I don't know. The guys might have thought there was like an element of protecting seeming forest creature thing from being killed. But Kai is quite purposely following after it and telling the rest of the gang not to let it escape.
Right? Does he
So
explain why that is, or does he make up some other story? Do they understand what his ultimate goal is? That's my question. Like, how much does Kai let them into what he's planning?
um, they saw Kai quote unquote tamed that spider.
Uh-huh.
Well, they woke up to it having happened. And all of Kai's pets have been killed. I don't think anyone here is stupid. uh,
So you think they understand what Kai is planning, or maybe, or he lets them in, or that he expects they understand what he's
he
perhaps
expects
planning.
they understand. His character is not a closed book.
Okay. What does Kai do as the Colossi moves just at the edge and into the forest? Or what does he say as it moves away?
He is running after it, shouting back to the others that he needs to get on its back.
Okay. So Kai immediately starts to follow, try to catch up, run. He knows he's going to have to perhaps climb the Colossi as it's moving, or find a, he's not going to stop it. I think Kai would understand if he's going to have to climb it like a tree, or find a good secure vantage point and, start to perform what he's going to perform, because it's going to take a little time, about an hour, give or take. Lothar, a particular question. Is that your real name, or is that the name of the man whose place you took?
I believe it is the name of the man that I took the place of.
Okay. And I'm just curious, because you are Sa'ar. So how much of the blood daughter and her father, your clan chief, Rezameameaman, how much of their vitriol and actions do you align with? Like, the Sa'ar witches are essentially no more. At first, they persecuted their witches, or, made them the lowest caste, because Sa'ar is a caste kind of society. And then others were rounded up. The only witches that Sa'ars had, under some pretense, they were stuffed into a wooden hut, and, that hut was set ablaze. Do you know about that? And what does Lothar think about it, really? Or is that why he attacked the witch outright?
Oh no, the witch attacked him. Lothar wasn't really seeking combat. I believe he's young and he doesn't know too much. Probably knows a little bit of the history and stuff. But his only goal, his only purpose, was to be a Templars, or a Wraithguard, not a Templar, a Wraithguard.
Yeah, to become a Wraithguard.
Right. And so, as long as nothing stands in the way of that, he really has no qualms with it, right? But whatever is in front of blocking that kind of path, then it just kind of has to get moved out of the way.
Okay. Now, the Sa'ars are a very they're a caste.
Regimental?
They're a caste barbarian clan. So there's the upper caste, which is related to the clan chief or the blood daughter, Razameaman. There's the middle caste. Then there's the low caste, the basic workers. They're not allowed to read. They're just told what to do. They come to their sermons and the speakings of the blood daughter, but they're, like low caste. There's one other caste that's even beneath them, who do jobs that no one else does.
Yeah, it's the slaves, right?
Yeah. Where does Lothar fit in that caste system?
Oh, I believe he's definitely probably a low caste member, which is probably why he wants to, embody and take over Lothar's spot in place.
Right. And You know that the barbarians were dressed as carrots or Karahar, but they were actually of your clan. So do you mention any of this to the group, or you keep it to yourself?
Yeah, I don't mention that.
Okay.
I mean, they're not concerned about those kinds of things.
Right.
Apparently, there's bigger to fry. It's bigger.
So as Hagen and Lothar, as Kai, jumps up and starts following this colossi into the forest, do you say anything or do anything, or you just follow Kai as he is obviously going to make an attempt to maybe subdue or control this colossi?
I'll just follow.
Okay. Lothar, I assume you follow too on your horse.
Oh yeah, we're in a small trot or a slow trot behind them.
Right. It's not actually, that the colossi as it goes crashing through the forest. It's not hard to follow. You actually could stay on your horse. Your horse kind of picks its way around a little bit, and because the colossi is kind of crashing through. It's a huge kind of beast, so it has to pick its way through the forest, and when it can't pick its way, it just makes a track. And so it's kind of easy for Lothar and his horse. What is it, Butterbee?
Yeah,
Right?
Butterbee.
Butterbee. That's Lothar's name for the horse, though, right?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what the horse was called beforehand, but it is forever hence known as Butterbee.
Yeah, you probably knew this man was going to be sent. Lothar was going to be sent to be a Wrathguard because he was slumming, drinking in a longhouse, and you were probably maybe looking for that opportunity, and he was in his cups a little bit and just complaining that, the Blood Daughter and Razamea man were sending him south to be a Wrathguard, but, he had to do what the Blood Daughter asked him to do, and, every Sahar has to do what is best for their clan. And you get a sense that the original Lothar was going south to become a Wrathguard, but almost like a Wrathguard spy. He was chosen for that job specifically. And that's how you kind of met him and maybe followed him along his way south towards Karvosti, or at least that's how you learned of it. Kai, as you're going through the forest, your plan is to climb the Colossi?
Help I wasn't muted.
Right.
Yeah. The pictures I've seen of Colossi have witches riding on the back of them. So I'm assuming there is some sort of flattish area on the back where I can do the ritual to bind this thing.
Yeah, Colossi are huge. This one has this, it almost has a mask, just like, it's got a painted wooden face. It's made of giant, almost tree limbs and that have been manufactured and hewn and stuck together in a magical sort of way. And it has vines and that created sinew and internal kind of structure. But there's a lot of handholds and spiky areas. So Kai, you catch up to it. I just need you to roll a quick test.
Yay. Oh dear.
Quick or strong to climb?
There is 1 point in them.
All right, roll me 1d4. Yeah, Kai, as you're climbing that, you catch up to it and you like put a foot on its giant calf, or, and you have to climb almost like you're climbing up a tree, really, with roots and and out things and sharp areas, and you almost fall and wrench your leg and ankle, and you get stabbed, in the forearm and in the chest, but you're just darn determined to make it up to the top. But it is a complicated climb. You get stuck a little bit in the pelvis, and as it walks, it almost like squeezes you in between these two areas of overlapping wooden areas and kind of crushes you. You get to the top, but you're kind of battered. You take 4 points of toughness damage just to climb to the top of this.
Worth noting that kills me.
What?
I have 4 points of toughness at the moment.
We'll make it 3 then.
Thank you.
I didn't actually look at your sheet before, otherwise I'd decided off the top of my head. You take 3 points of damage. You throw your one leg over like the right shoulder, and you're kind of riding on top of that colossi. The horns are sticking out. You're kind of perched up on top of the colossi. What this Kai do is he's bleeding, holding on for dear life, and realize he looks down. If he falls from this vantage, that bad things are going to happen. What does Kai start doing?
I imagine growing up in the forest, he's learned tree climbing principles like 3 points of contact and stuff like that.
Sure. But he hasn't been out. He hasn't been outside the Hall of a Thousand Tears very much. He's pretty.
He's very sheltered.
Right, very sheltered.
Holding firmly on with one hand and keeping his legs wrapped around, draws his dagger and is like holding that between his teeth, and then dipping his finger wherever he's being like stabbed by tree branches, starts scribing runes in his blood whilst that's still flowing, so he doesn't have to like cut himself or anything to get ink or else blood to use in this ritual.
So I imagine he starts the ritual of enslave as he's riding atop this giant colossi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he
Where are you carving it into? The shoulder, is back of his head, the scapula area, big broad area on its back.
Yeah, it's that sort of.
Okay.
Between like the what's that lump between like where your shoulders meet your neck and the spine, where that like little knobbly bit is. Yeah,
it's actually C6 for us, cervical vertebrae number 6. That's our lump right there. But it doesn't have that. But it has this big like knobby spine that's wooden that you probably could carve into what would amount to its vertebrae or that up that side.
Yeah, he's relying on like the magical concept of a central nervous system.
Right. So you start carving away. Hagen and Lothar, you see Kai climb, and he falls and wrenches, and he may even make a sound of pain, as he gets wrenched a little bit and he gets squashed in between as the pelvis moves as he's trying to climb up there. But he's darn determined to get up top. You see him throw his leg over and, take a moment, perhaps stop some bleeding and catch his breath, and he starts carving away with a dagger on the back of it. Do Hagen and Lothar do anything specific?
I start clapping.
Start clapping.
It's like, he made it. Now what?
Right. Lothar, make a quick test.
I would just keep a lookout, that's all.
Okay. Hagen, you're probably, Lothar, I assume, is behind you, like with the horse picking his way through. Have you been to this area? Have you mapped this area? Do you remember it at all?
Now, the location would be
just like right
Where?
here, just kind of north. Yeah, it's like in the forest there. You're just kind of north of the river. You're just kind of east of Karvosti, by a day or so travel. And I'm just
I think
curious.
that would be an. I think it would be an area that I would be familiar with, at
Yeah.
least doing my cartography.
Now, does Hagen map for himself? Like he is a freelancer, or why does he map? Was he sent here on purpose to map an area, or contracted under change of money and hands, or is this a solo enterprise that you peddle maps that you make?
I think it's just his own personal interest in understanding the lay of the land and just his appreciation for maps themselves.
Okay.
And he probably would try to sell them, where possible.
So roll me a resolute check, Hagen. Lothar, as you're on the top of Butterbee, this new horse you acquired, Butterbee isn't settled in the matter. And as you're watching Kai comes back, it leans its head back and takes a nip out of your upper leg with its broad, flat teeth. And you suffer 1 point of damage for toughness. Your horse kind of makes this noise, and Butterbee and Lothar, or you, have yet to come to terms with Lothar now being its owner. How acquainted are you with the horses?
With horses, I'm very acquainted. Since the talent is whatever it's called, Ascarian, Aquarian.
Yeah.
But every animal has its own personality and stuff. You have to kind of get used to. And me and Butterbee, we'll have to have a coming to Jesus moment sooner or later.
Yeah, Butterbee has a little bit of blood on his flank that no one's really recognized. Kind of old, dried blood from the manner in which Lothar acquired him. Even though he is equestrian and he's got very good familiarity with horses, he is yet to establish his, not necessarily dominance, but come to terms with Butterbee just yet.
Our working relationship.
Yeah, working relationship. Butterbee finds himself with a new rider, and there was probably some degree of strife involved with that process. And he and Lothar are not quite yet on the same page. He still follows commands and all, but every now and then you can tell there's a gleam in the horse's eye that he's trying to decide who's in charge yet. Hagen, you've been to this area. As you move through the forest, you realize you've been here before. It's this remote memory that you can't really grasp. You feel that you've been here, but for whatever reason, you can't remember that you've been here. And it's a little unsettling. You get this sudden chill, maybe small hairs on your forearms rise a little bit. Does Hagen do anything when this kind of odd sensation of deja vu settles over him?
I think I would probably kind of strain my brain to try to recall what it is that I can't recollect. Like move out from where these guys are working, kind of like to try to clear my thoughts and get away from their distractions right now.
Huh, the sound of them. Do you do anything to maybe try to help you remember, or you're just kind of quiet for a moment in the forest, let Lothar kind of go up ahead a little bit?
I think I might take out my cartography stuff and just try to recollect, creating a map.
Yeah, I'd let you roll vigilant at +2. See if you find something in your pack. You go shuffling through some maps. You know, you're partially walking through the forest, partially walking where you're going so you don't get lost or don't fall too far behind from Lothar and the giant colossi. And you kind of swing your pack probably over to the front, you know, and you start shuffling through, you know, your drawings and your maps and stuff. And you come across this drawing of like giant boulders. And you've scribed whorls and patterns in them, and they kind of come up, maybe, you know, there's a bunch of them, and there's a little bit of writing at the bottom that you can't really decipher because it's almost in a different script. And all these kind of boulders you've drawn have different patterns, different text or different symbols on them, and you just can't remember why you drew them, but you know that you drew them here, that you were here in this place among these boulders, but you have forgotten until you got to this point. You can't really remember doing that drawing. There's no other indication of north, south, west, which is weird for you because you'd at least put some other things around it to kind of orientate you later if you had to add it to a map. The drawing of the boulders, though, are fairly detailed. Like there's a couple of them that you've sketched out, you know, 3 different sides of it. What does Hagen do when he finds that? Or does he say anything about it?
I would probably ask them to see if we could locate some boulders.
You're in the middle of this huge forest.
Right, and they're probably going to look at me like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, Kai is busy like chipping away at the, you know, well, he may look back to see if you are all there, but, you know, he's really like zoned in on doing this ritual on this colossi. Lothar's up ahead of you, and, you know, you call out, maybe look for some boulders, and probably stuff that back into your pack. You get this kind of unsettling feeling, Hagen, that you don't understand why you wouldn't remember being there, why you don't remember drawing it. It doesn't sit well with you. You almost have this sensation that you left that place with some degree of rapidity, like you not necessarily you fled that place in some degree, like for some reason you fled that place, and as soon as you were outside that, you couldn't remember it all. Kai, you're up on top. It's probably been about 30 minutes. You're carving away, trying to put the rune into the area of that, what would be the backbone for us of the colossi. In about 30 minutes, it stops. It looks up at you, turns its huge head, and then looks down at the witch that's tucked into the crook of its arm. You know, you can see her if you look over. She's just laid out, not moving, eyes open, pale skin, you know, still got kind of rocks and stuff stuck to her face and skin and her wounds, but they're not bleeding anymore. And then the colossi looks back up at you, and then it turns. It was headed kind of true north, but it turns slightly to the west, and like a 45-degree angle off its track. After it looks at you, it kind of makes this rumble in its chest. It almost sounds a little mourning, or a little, not like pity, but like sad, and it kind of shakes your legs as you're holding onto it.
Look, I'm not going to stop you doing whatever this is. This is just for afterwards.
It doesn't really do anything. Like, you maybe stop, but then you know, perhaps keep carving. Does Kai do anything else as this kind of mourning sound comes up, and the colossi takes like a 45-degree turn and then starts moving into the forest? in a different sort of direction.
Continue etching. Like, I'm not stopping until I'm done.
Okay. You keep carving. Does he feel any sense of rush or, time frame? All right. Does it phase him at all?
Lork, the player, does. Kai, the very single-minded, does not.
Okay.
He was being truthful to this Colossi, though, that like, if there's some weird post-witch death ritual burial thing it has to go do, he is going to support it in that endeavor.
Kai has no idea what the Colossi is doing. He would probably know that the Colossi and the witch are bound. He doesn't know much about clan. He probably doesn't understand that relationship between the witch and their Colossi. He does know how they're...
He probably assumes it's going to bury her by her favorite tree or something like that.
Yeah. He does know how they're made. I would think, given that he's an elf. So he does know that the Colossi is made by using the spirit of a willing witch that is hale, which means they're whole. They're believe in the witches. They're not run by vengeance or anger, or they're not on their last breath. They're not dying from disease. Otherwise, if a Colossi is made using a witch's spirit of that nature, they can become a rogue Colossi, and that's why meeting a Colossi all by itself in the forest without a witch is a dicey matter. So this big giant Colossi takes this like 45-degree turn. Hagen and Lothar, you're standing behind him, and all of a sudden you see it stop. And there's a moment where the Colossi is looking back and forth between Kai and the dead witch in its arm that it's carrying. And then it just turns. It's like not about face, but it's like, a column right. And it turns, or column left turns, and starts marching in this different direction in the forest. The trees thin a little bit as it's moving west after about 10-15 minutes. And Hagen, the Colossi, comes to this field of large boulders that are piled on top of each other, making like a tall kind of hill with a kind of a narrow diameter, but kind of steep size. So these huge kind of boulders, there's boulders of different sizes all over the place. And they come to a clearing where they're kind of stacked up on each other in a kind of half-hours ways, but it kind of makes this little mountain, little hill in the forest that the trees have seeded to this area. You step out as the Colossi starts to climb. Kai, you're on the back of the Colossi, and the Colossi starts to climb these huge boulders towards the top. At the top, you see this kind of stone stela that rises probably 20 feet, maybe 9 meters, 7 meters, 8 meters high at the very top of the kind of boulder collection is this stela that rises up that looks like it's stone. But the Colossi starts to climb up that mountain of boulders. Hagen, what you do is you reach this boulder field.
Now, do I recollect anything as we enter this field?
Yeah, you look around because you had just looked at your drawing and you practically see the boulders that you have drawn, at different places on this collection of piled up giant rocks. Some are small, some are huge. And you can see in the sunlight a variety of motifs carved into the boulders, all of them, spirals and chevrons and patterns and dots, and there's scripts and letters. And you recollect, almost see yourself walking through this boulder field at some other time with wonder, looking at all these kind of carvings. Some are very old, and the styles of the carving are incongruous. They're not the same. Even the lettering is the same. You almost picture yourself picking up a small one that you can hold in one hand, and that little kind of rock is carved all over. Some of the carvings are weathered, like with time, and the edges are, they're just little furrows, and you just barely see a hint of the carvings. Other carvings are like sharp, like they're newer per se, but you do suddenly remember walking through this field.
I would probably try to recollect what made me flee or abruptly depart the area.
I think it would be fear or uncertainty.
But just generally speaking of the unknown carvings, do you think?
No, the carvings and the boulders and that sort of thing, they don't, when you look at them, I think Hagen would look at them with not necessarily awe, but he is a cartographer. And so there's a degree of art in making maps and lines and perspective and, that sort of thing. And putting things in the right place and knowing where to put stuff. And I think when he looked at the boulders, he gets this sense of he looks at it with almost an artist's eye or cartographer's eye, like, how was that done? And the intricacy of the carvings themselves or the letters, he even may remember him running a finger over them, but it's not the boulders, it's something else that he encountered there that unsettled him.
Okay, I would just enter the area just on high alert, very cautiously.
Do you say anything to Lothar or Kai as Kai is holding on to this giant colossi climbing to the top?
Well, I would definitely share with them, an apprehension that I have the area.
Okay. Do you do anything else?
No, like I said, just stay vigilant.
All right. Do you follow the colossi, or do you stay at the base of that boulder mound?
I think I would follow.
Okay. Lothar, you come to the edge of this clearing, and Butterby immediately stops. Ears are forward. You see the horse, the stallion, take a step forward and then withdraw and just kind of shake a little bit. You feel its flanks, its foreflank, the flanks of its forelegs kind of shudder a little bit, and its tail swishes once, and you just see it, ears forward, they flick one way and the next, and then it just stops. The horse just stops at the edge of the boulder field. What does Lothar do?
I think Lothar would be, kind of pat the horse, like, okay, something's amiss here. And then, kind of look around to see if he could notice something different. We got Kanku 2.0 going one direction and Trap Guy going the other direction.
Right.
So he probably feels like the horse, like, do we want to take another step? We don't know where this is going here.
All right. So roll me a vigilant. You stay atop Butterby, though. You don't dismount. You just stay there at the edge of the boulder field.
Yeah. So I could see further.
Okay. You look around the field, Lothar. You see Hagen start to climb. The colossi is, huge, so it's just going up this mound, with these big long steps, huge boulders. It's just climbing up like it's nothing for it. Kai is holding on, while he's trying to carve, as it's climbing this boulder field. You don't really see anything. You look to the left, you look to the right, you look up the boulder field, you see the stela on the top that rises, and you probably see Hagen perhaps look at a couple of the boulders and shake his head and start climbing after Kai. He obviously is going to take much longer to get there. But nothing comes out. You don't understand why the horse is fidgety.
In that case, I'll reach into my bag and pull out a horse snack, apple or something. I don't know.
Sure.
And, try to coax it, through a treat to move forward.
Yeah, you are an equestrian, so I'd probably give you a persuasion roll at +2. You're using a treat, so maybe I make it +3. See if you can coax Butterby. Your relationship isn't that strong yet. Yeah, so you pull out the apple. It's probably a little bit older and wrinkled, but still it's an apple and it smells like an apple. And you immediately, Butterby, the stallion's horse, snorts and, tips its head back and opened its lip for its big fat, teeth. And you feed it the apple and it kind of shakes it off a little bit and chewing on the apple. A lot of pieces are falling out of its mouth, but it distracts it. And if you give it a little kick or a little bit of a nudge, it'll just, absentmindedly start walking towards the base of the boulder mound. Is that what Lothar does?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, its ears flatten a little bit if you make that much noise. Jumps a little bit. You gotta hold on if you've ever kicked the horse like that.
Oh, yeah.
You roll out the back of it. Yeah, so it jitters a little bit, but it's got apple. You got apple. You're taking its mind off whatever's got it a little bit jittery. Kai, you make it all the way to the top. You see this stela rise that has writing on it. You can tell that, if you look briefly on as you're finishing up this ritual, you can see that. You get to the top and there's just like these two huge boulders, and then the stela rises it and like it's driven down through a crack, through all the boulders, and it's rising up there. Maybe tipped a little bit, just with age and wear. And then there's this huge opening.
Could I use Lawmaster to make a guesstimate about anything about this place?
Sure. I mean, you could use Lore Master to read what's on the stela. You could use Lore Master, see if he knows anything necessarily about what this may be. Yeah, so you look around as you finish your just as you finish the glyph. It's still going to take a little bit of time to enact the ritual, but you finish carving the rift in the rune or the glyph into the Colossi, and you look up and you see this kind of stela up there, and squint a little bit, and you can read it. Down one side it says, "With our bones do imprison, with our spirits do manage, sleep, quiet," and it's written in a couple of different languages. Kai doesn't necessarily know exactly what this place is, aside from that it's a barbarian witch place. Like, that's written in old barbarian, probably just after, or a few decades or within a century after the fall of the Symbaroum nation. But it's written by barbarians. It's not Elvish, and the stela is pretty darn old. He's not quite sure what to make of what it says. He's looking at it, and what happens is the Colossi reaches in and picks up the witch who's just dangling from its huge kind of hand, and then he leans over, like you have to grab on so you don't fall off. He leans over and he sticks his hand down this hole, which is probably as wide as a man is tall. Sticks his hand down. He has to stick his hand down so far that he almost lays down so his head is on the boulders, and his arm is all the way in there. Kai probably has to scuttle to the other side because his right arm, it goes completely down into this hole. And you just he just sits there for a while. The colossi just sits there for a while, and then it stands up and pulls its arm out, and the witch is no longer in its hand. And then it just dips its head and goes quiet or silent. What does Kai do?
He has a sort of like look around. Is he finished? He's finished carving at the.
Yeah, the ritual isn't quite done yet. He knows he has a little bit of time before the rune and the ritual finishes, before he knows whether it works, and he's not really quite sure. A lot of times when he's done this before with the spider, I don't know how many times before he's done it aside from the spider, but there was a moment of quiescence, even with the spider, that lingered a little bit. With the spider, it was 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes before it came about, and so it's not quite an automatic thing. He's not quite sure if the colossi is dormant for that reason, like the ritual is starting to take effect and it's just going to take a little time, or this is part of what it's doing because it just put the witch's body down this shaft or hole.
Then he's kind of like stand quietly to the side of the Colossus and look and go. Some kind of graveyard. Well, my respects to the fallen, and sort of nod his head at the
He's
hole that the Colossi put the witch into.
okay. He's saying this to the colossi, like almost like being polite.
Yeah.
Does he look down the hole?
No,
No. Okay.
I'm not a necromancer yet.
All right. Lothar, you're at the base of the mound. You know that the horse isn't going to make it up the steep. Horses don't climb. The horse kind of shakes his head and snorts a bit, and stamps, one of his front hooves. What does Lothar do as he reaches that spot?
Well, I think he probably sits there for a little bit, watches the scene of Kai and probably climbs off, looks for somewhere to tie off the horse.
Okay, yeah, it's pretty easy. So you start tying off or around a big boulder, tie a knot in the reins and flip him in a narrow fissure between two boulders or three boulders. Does he stay in the boulder field itself, or does he climb up after Hagen?
I think he climbs up.
Okay. So Lothar and Hagen, you're climbing up. Hagen's probably just past the half point, or he's getting pretty close to where Kai is, and Hagen, is maybe at the quarter point of climbing up. And as you're climbing, going hand over hand and watching your feet and making sure you notice that all the rocks you're climbing on are carved. Some are old, some are newer, and you catch sight of something forming on the right and left of you in a line.
Like the ground, or
Yeah, like figures. Like figures are on the right and left of you, like numerous figures start to form as you're climbing up on the right and left of you.
it's probably too steep to stand on, right?
You might be able to find a flat place, like, to stand, or, it is steep enough where you could just hold on a boulder and stop and look around. because it's a boulder field, and so there's obviously places you could stop and stand, look out.
Right? Do they go all the way up, or is it just like around me?
No, like you look up Lothar, and you look up as Hagen probably looks around, and you see that the line of these figures start to form that are really going up towards the top.
All right, I'd call out. I think we have company, or something crazy is going on.
Hagen, what do you do as these figures of witches start to form on either side of you? You're muted, by the way.
Do they look like they're like materializing into?
Yeah, they look wispy, like they materialize. You kind of stop and you notice that they're all kneeling at different points of the rock, like flat areas. Like if you had a place to sit while you were climbing, that's where they form, but they're forming in a line. You notice that they're all kneeling, and as you stop and look at them, that they're all kneeling, they look like they almost have gags through their mouth. They kind of look broken and bent, even though as they start forming, they become more solidified. But you do see a little bit of a breeze kind of blow through them and pull part of them off like wisps of smoke. They just look at you, and most of them are like gagged. Some of them are actually missing their bottom jaws. You look at how they're dressed, and some of them are dressed in clothes you don't recognize. Some of them are not dressed. Some of them have wounds that don't bleed. They look incorporeal, or like they're becoming more and more solid as you look at them, but they lack color. They're whites and grays and blacks.
But do I think this is maybe part of a ritual?
I don't think Hagen would know that it is part of a ritual. He has no idea. There's some memory in Hagen that he probably, as they form, he probably swallows, like it's they're part of the reason he left. Or he has some memory of them imploring him to do something, and almost like you were in this position before, like Hagen wanted to climb to the top of this the last time was here that he doesn't remember, and he almost remembers seeing them and stopping in this position, and they look at him and then seem to want to say something, but they're gagged or they're missing their jaws, and they look up to the top with eyes that kind of implore him to move to the top. But for whatever reason, Hagen, something bothered him about it, or there's some fear or some part of this that he doesn't remember, and he crawled out or left or ran and then forgot.
So do I think that they're trying to motion me towards the higher ground and continue up?
Yeah, you get this sensation, Hagen, that they want you to go to the top, almost like they're bound or in bondage, or they look like they're prisoners. When you look at them, they're even though they're ghosts or incorporeal, or they're becoming more and more solid. The breeze takes little pieces of them, but they're some of them are obviously have their hands in front of them that are bound. Some of them are behind. You can roll a cunning test if you'd like.
Okay. Well, I would continue up.
Okay. Lothar, you see Hagen look at them and then start moving up to the top. Oh, very nice. What does Lothar do as these witches materialize all around him as a member of the Saw clan.
Well, I think Lothar, feeling the previous nervousness of his horse and seeing the predicament that he's in now, probably starts to go down the mountain.
All right. you
There's a reason why animals have that kind of weird sense.
right. You probably hear Butterby down there, whinny. You look down there, the ears are flat, the tail is quiet, like he's shying away, maybe even trying to pull at his reins. And Lothar, you decide to retreat back down the mound.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, what good is a horseman without a horse, right?
Right. Hagen, you continue to climb. And as you climb, you see these bound, gagged spirits of witches, look at you and then look up and look at you and look up, almost imploring you to go. But you have a sense that there's something that's off. There's something that's not.
I think something is missing or something.
Not necessarily missing, but the manner in which they're urging you forward just feels less than true. If that makes sense. Like you catch something in the way they look at you or the way they're imploring or the manner in which they do it, the urgency of it, the requirement of it, that they want you to the top of this, that makes you a little bit
Weary.
Leery. Like there's something in those eyes and that look that doesn't just seem like, like a slave that wants to be free. If that makes sense. Like there's something else there. Something else than witches who want you to go to the top, or witches that were bound to this place unwillingly. There's something else that Hagen doesn't really understand as he's going up to the top. You reach the top where Kai is there with the Colossi. The Colossi is kind of dormant, head down. Kai, you've watched Hagen and you've seen these witches kind of materialize in little croppings up towards the top. It ends maybe 10 feet, 3 meters from the top. Hagen walks out of that line, and no witches are in that space between the top and about 10 meters or 10 feet or 3 meters. And Hagen meets the top. What does Kai do as Hagen reaches the top? Oh, he went to get.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'll look over at Hagen. Here for the witch funeral too?
I don't know if this is part of the funeral.
Oh, where'd all these ghosts come from?
So I don't know if this is part of the ritual. Did you start a ritual?
Well, Mr. Colossi here buried his witch partner in that hole, and Kai will lightly peer into it, not leaning over in case he gets pushed or something, but just like a hole in the ground. And now we're just silently paying our respects.
Yeah, Kai, you lean over like you're afraid of heights, Look down the opening, really, because it is probably about the width of a man. Obviously, the rocks were piled up to create this kind of shaft or whatever, hole. And Hagen, that's what you see when you reach the top. The Colossi is kind of dormant. Hagen tells you that it reached down and put its witch in this down deep, or somewhere down there, put its arm down and left her there. Kai, you look over, and you see a faint, like flickering glow, like white light, probably 15 feet, maybe 5 meters down that shaft. It is flickering around parts. You probably just catch the hint of the witch that the Colossi just laid down on that surface, and then underneath her, there's this kind of roundish, kind of glinting light.
Looks like a witch funeral setup to me. I'm sure it's perfectly normal. Hagen.
Now, do you speak with confidence? Does your character speak with confidence when you say that? Because you can see Hagen kind of doubting, this whole scenario right now.
I mean, from Ty's perspective, the worst that can happen is that these witches rise up to defend this site in Davokar from interlopers, and getting here, we've already killed several humans, which is like a net positive in terms of many people from the Iron Pact. So like he's doing well. Like he left the Iron Pact and he's gotten several people killed already.
Well, as long as they don't consider what we're doing trespassing, I guess we'll be okay.
That's why Kai is respectfully standing there, paying his respects. He didn't know this witch, but
Hagen
Lothar may not want to come up here.
Yeah, you look. Hagen and Kai, make a resolute check for me, please. Lothar, you get to the bottom, and maybe you look at that, double threes. You get to the bottom as you regain Butterbee's side, and calm the horse down a little bit, and it kind of snorts and ears are still flat, and you look up to the top where Hagen and Kai is, and you see the line of witches kind of disperse and then form a ring around the top, like around the top of the mound, roughly, 3 meters, 10 feet below the top, where Hagen and Kai, you can see them looking down this hole and talking about it, but the witches kind of shift, and now they form a complete ring around the top. What does Lothar do as he reaches the bottom and the safety of his horse?
Well, I think there's not much I can do besides wait to see what happens.
You just kind of stand there, calming your horse, calming Butterbee.
Yeah, calming Butterbee. I'll what do you call it? Untie the reins. Probably hop on him in case some expediency is needed.
Right. That probably settles him a bit. Like he's ready to go. You hop on him and you like immediately like he turns to like leave the boulder field, but you kind of have to pull the reins back to get him to stand near there, or do you let him just start to move out?
No, I try to hold him up. Even if he's trying to like point away, I'll like turn in the saddle towards the what's going on, so I can see what's happening, but
Okay.
I'll hold him up.
Hagen and Kai, you are standing there looking into the hole, and you see that kind of glimmering light, discussing, what the heck's going on. You look back down to check where Lothar is, and you realize that there's a ring of ghost witches around the top of it. You hear them implore you to free us and it's not in your head. It's almost like the wind is whispering to you, or the breeze is whispering to you. You hear their voices. First it's 1, and then it's 5, and then it's 15, asking or imploring you to free them. Free us from this bondage. What does Hagen do?
Kai, I think maybe we should leave.
Kai sort of nods and looks back to the Colossi and, are you able to communicate? Like, tap the ground once for yes, twice for no?
Yeah, the Colossi is dormant. Like, you knock on it, maybe even knock on its huge kind of mask. You realize it's not moving at all. There's a little shudder that goes through it. You and Hagen, Hagen says, we got to go. Or, this feels iffy, or, and a couple minutes, maybe a couple 30 seconds, 45 seconds, Kai, and then the Colossi moves a little bit and puts one giant hand on the ground and starts to stand. What does Kai do when Hagen, says that we should leave?
So the Colossi is moving.
Yeah, it's getting up to stand, really.
Okay.
Hello.
Kai is going to say, tap the ground if that rune has worked. And then start following Hagen.
Hagen, do you start going down the mountain?
I think I would.
Okay. So Kai, what happens is the Colossi stands, and then almost like you did, it kind of leans over and peers down the hole to the shaft that goes down the boulder field, the boulder, mound where it had put its witch. Kind of leans over and looks on it, almost the exact way Kai did, like you're afraid of heights, lean over to look down there. And then you just feel that rumble again, the Colossi rumbles in its chest. And then it looks down at you. And it raises its hand. What does Kai do?
Great question. He is ready to try and dodge being squished, aware that will probably result in him falling down and cracking his skull on this mountain.
Yeah, you got one toughness ready.
Yeah, anything is going to kill me tonight.
Well, I think the Colossi could kill you even if you were at your full strength, but its arm moves towards you. Its big giant hand goes to grab you, Kai. What do you do? I'll tell you what, roll a resolute test at +3.
Yeah, like if Kai's confident his rune has worked, he will let it grab him.
Okay.
He feels pretty confident, by a very narrow margin.
And so he's just gonna stand there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reaches down and picks you up, Kai, off the ground. You feel it squeeze just a little bit too tight, like your bones grown a bit. Hagen is starting to climb back down the mound, and it picks you up so your face is level with it. And you just see it look at you, and then it plops you on its right shoulder and turns and starts climbing down the mound. Hagen, as you're climbing down the mound, the witches kind of form around you. And you're climbing down, and each little flat place, the ghost of a bound witch is there, and you hear separate voices. Don't leave us here. Remove us from our bondage. Save us from this terrible existence. As you're climbing down the mound from the top, you look up and you see Kai lifted up in the air and put on the Colossi shoulder, and you're about halfway down. Does Hagen do anything, or just keep climbing?
Move quicker.
Move quicker. All right.
Make haste.
Make haste. You climb down, Hagen. Hagen, you get to the bottom, probably jump that last little bit, land on your feet, just at the same time that Kai is made the bottom, because he's riding this huge colossi. He climbs down, and you kind of reach the bottom together. Lothar is midway in the boulder field on the horse, and the colossi kind of stands up, looks at Kai, and then looks down at Hagen. What do you two do to reach Lothar?
Is it looking at us like for instruction? You mean like?
Yeah, you look at it for a minute, Hagen. It looks to you, it looks to Kai, and you almost see it. It's almost like a funny little shrug, but it's a colossi, so there's nothing funny or little about it. It's almost, bucks Kai off the side of the shoulder, and then it reaches down to grab you.
Grab me.
Yeah.
I will tap it and go, he's a friend. He's a friend. Now, over to the other friend, pointing at the other.
Kai, Hagen, do you let the colossi pick you up?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, he just picks you up, puts you on the other shoulder. Kai's on one
It's a little
side.
too tight.
Yeah, Kai's on one side, straddled the right shoulder. You're on the other side, and it kind of stands up and starts meandering its way, because its one lower leg is a little bit shorter than the other, so it's kind of like a trundle over to Lothar and his horse and Gutorm, who's just at the edge of the clearing of the boulder field. You make Lothar and the horse's side. The horse, shies a little bit, but oddly enough, Lothar, not as much as you expect the stallion to shy from the colossi. It almost smells it a little bit and snorts, and its ears pop back up. What do Lothar, Kai, and Hagen do as they meet in the middle of the kind of boulder field, and they see Gutorm standing at the edge?
You missed all the fun, Gutorm.
Look, I know you have short legs, but I managed to keep up with this thing.
All right. Ding. Is the Colossi standing right there?
Yeah. So our catch you up, or take a moment to catch up, catch Gutorm up. what happened until this point. So we did a small recap, and then what happened was Kai followed the Colossi and climbed up it because he wants to enact this rune and take control of the Colossi. Hagen and Lothar followed him through the forest as the Colossi is walking, with the witch in its crook of its arm through Davokar. At some point, about 30 minutes into the ritual, the Colossi stopped, looked at Kai, looked down at the witch, looked at Kai, and then abruptly made like a 45-degree angle turn and walked in a different, westerly direction, kind of northwest direction, and came to this big kind of boulder field of these boulders stacked up on each other that in the forest in this small clearing, but stacked up high, about 7 meters, 8 meters, 20 feet tall. And at the top there was this stone stela. Now all those boulders were carved in many different ways, spirals and patterns and glyphs and text, and some of the boulders were very old, and some of the boulders look more newly carved. Kai, the Colossi climbed all the way up to the top. Hagen decided to follow. He has a memory of being in this place, and it's this disconcerting memory that he suddenly realizes he's been here before, but he can't remember why or when it was. He even finds a drawing of the boulder field in his pack, but he has no idea why he fled, and he starts climbing after Kai. Lothar gets his horse Butterby to enter the clearing because the horse has a little bit of finickiness about it, and he feeds him an apple and gets him to the base of the boulders, and eventually dismounts and climbs up after Hagen. At the top, the Colossi takes the witch and bends down into this hole or shaft that's at the very top, and dips its arm all the way to the shoulder joint, and with the witch in its hand, and seems to leave her there at the bottom of that shaft, and then kind of stands up and becomes inert. Kai thinks because his ritual is starting to take effect. Hagen and Lothar, as they're climbing, suddenly the ghosts of a whole number of witches start forming around them in this line leading up to the top. All the witches are on their knees and bound in some way, shackles, rope. Some of them have clothes, some of them don't. They don't recognize necessarily the clothes. They're ancient. And some of them are missing their lower jaws, and the other ones are gagged. And they seem to implore Hagen and Lothar to go to the top of the mound with Kai. Lothar doesn't want to have anything to do with that, and he promptly goes back down the mound to his horse Butterby, and mounts it, and then moves off a little bit into the boulder field. Hagen remembers them and climbs to the top with Kai. They both kind of look down the shaft. They see the witch's body on the ground that they can't really make out, but they also see this like glowing disc underneath her that scintillates this kind of white light, and the witches form a ring, or the ghosts of the witches form a ring around the top of the mound, and they hear them ask Hagen and Kai to free them from their bondage. At which point, I think you had arrived, the Colossi wakes up, picks up Kai. Hagen and Kai decide that they don't want to act in any fashion with that request from these ghost wish, and they go back down the mountain, and that's where we find ourselves. Any questions?
Yes, for my memory.
Mhm.
What did it say on the stones?
Oh, Kai read the stela, which is like a 3-sided stela that goes up made of rock, and Kai, as his ritual finished, kind of looked at it, and it's written in very old barbarian. And the stela said, with our bones do imprison, with our spirits do manage sleep and quiet, in a number of different kind of barbarian dialects over the, he thinks, centuries, really. Gutorm, you have any questions?
I think I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so Gutorm, you've seen Colossi up on Karvosti. They're always with the witch. They're somewhat majestic, calm, but obviously incredibly dangerous. And you've seen this Colossi like collect its witch and take it. It almost seems probably that it rerouted itself after Kai was doing whatever he was doing. You know that Kai is taking control of this Colossi that was bound to this other witch. What do you think about that?
First of all, they're quite bigger than Kandu, so Guton feels quite small.
Yeah, this thing is huge, like 3 times the size of Kandu.
Yeah, so when it gets closer to Kandu, you can see, Gutom, you can see Gutom kind of takes a step away from it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Keeping a little distance.
Does he think anything about Kai obviously doing some sort of magic to...
The first thing that comes to my mind is witchcraft.
Right. Does that
Yeah.
witchcraft bother him at all or not?
I guess I've seen it around, so it doesn't bother me that much, really. But
Okay. No, I was just curious.
the witchcraft doesn't bother me, but the big thing bothers me a little bit because it's big.
All right.
The
So
big thing is actually witchcraft. What Kai was doing was sorcery.
magic.
Yeah,
is
it's
magic.
sorcery, witchcraft is potato.
Yeah, I was just curious if Gutorm, if he had any opinion or any thoughts of how he felt about Kai's act of taking control of a Colossi that was a witch, since he has grown up, since he is essentially a Karvosti goblin, so I was just curious what he would say. So
Yeah, but I seen him with a flaming man, and I see him.
True, but that's a little bit different than perhaps subjugating a witch's Colossi to your own means. But obviously, Gutorm doesn't have any feelings about that in and of itself. Maybe he doesn't have close ties with witches, that sort of thing. His ties are mostly with wrath guards, or
Yeah, I guess so.
right. So the party is in this kind of boulder field. Hagen, Kai, Gutorm, and Lothar. Hagen and Kai are on top of the giant Colossi. Gutorm's still on his feet, and Lothar's atop his horse. You look up to the mound of boulders, and you see that line of witches, no longer a circle at the top. It's a line, like a pathway, outlining a pathway to the top. You don't hear their voices anymore while you're in the middle of the boulder field, imploring you to free them. What does the company do?
Okay, what were we doing before we got sidetracked here?
You were headed southwest
No, but
towards...
I'm asking everybody.
Oh, well,
Authority.
Tom just got an ID, so he's starting to find some wines and some small.
We're trying to recover the bear head. A bunch of you humans invaded our sanctuary and stole it. The heart of the forest. We were going to Ambria. No? How did everyone forget this? It is
Well,
a
I
matter
don't.
of crucial importance to the health and well-being of Davokar as a whole.
I have no
The
idea
bear
what you're
dies, the
talking about.
forest dies,
Yeah, Lothar
and
has
then the
no idea.
darkness returns.
It doesn't
Oh,
matter.
you're new, right? Sorry. A lot of you humans look the same to me. Right. A bunch of humans broke into my home, the one of the sanctuaries of ourselves deeper within Davokar, and they stole the heart of the forest. It was well, we call it a heart of the forest. It's this particular one. It is actually the head of a great bear, and we assume they're ambrian because of you humans. They are kind of the worst. Not you, Hagen.
I'm not a human.
You, and we do appreciate you forest natives. Like the ears tell me that you are not just a short human. Don't worry, I will learn to recognize your face. We're trying to get to Karvosti to go to Thistle Hold. I assume Karvosti is like the name of the gate town to Thistle Hold.
I think Kai would know that Karvosti is the seat of the High Chief Theraband and the barbarians, whereas Thistle Hold is south and is the known city of treasure hunters of the Ambrian on the south border of Davokar.
Oh yeah, but he has no idea where these places actually are.
Okay.
I have a question out of character. The new party members, have they been to Karvosti?
Hagen, have you been to Karvosti?
Yeah.
I don't expect Lothar has been to Karvosti, correct?
Nope, that's where he was heading.
Right. So only Hagen has been to Karvosti.
I haven't.
Yeah. You're telling me you haven't, correct? I mean, you probably know of Karvosti and the road from, or the path from
Utom's been to Karvosti. Utom saved Karvosti.
Yeah, he hasn't been to Thistle Hold. The plan was to go to the bridge over to Malgomor and take the path south past Jakar and then figure out Karvosti once you got there. The bridge of the Malgomor is right there. The path, I just have to show it to you, is south, goes by Jakar, and then exits the forest somewhat west of Thistlehold, crosses the Ianor River, and then continues south to exit west.
I think I would know the path.
Yeah, I would think, since you've been here, Hagen, and now you remember this, those memories probably come flooding back of you scrambling down the mound and the witches beseeching you to free them, and just their voices over and over. But as you left the edge of the boulder field, you forget. And And I think standing there in the middle of the boulder field, looking up at the mound, you remember being here the first time and trying to climb to the top. But then, like Lothar, you got about halfway and decided to leave or run. And once you left the boulder field, you forget. And you probably came maybe up that route from Davokar and Thistle Hold originally.
Right. Well, let's continue on our merry way, shall we?
Okay. So the company will retrack their steps, go back to the Malgomor, and then head, somewhat southwest, really almost straight west to the bridge camp. Anyone do anything before they leave the boulder field?
Nope.
Okay.
Already at a trot. Let's get out of here.
All right.
Gutom, he's still trying to find some vines and some sticks, like some solid sticks. He could knit together with some vines or anything.
Tom, what the hell are you doing? Let's go.
Just I have an idea. Just give me some time here.
So you scrounge around the boulder field in the border of Davokar.
Yeah, I mean, you just see Gutom's crawling around the boulder field. He like climbing a boulder, standing on it, looking around.
Okay.
Try to step off.
Yeah, you
Maybe
find
slip with
like
his foot.
Small trees have grown in this area, and then they're toppled over or they don't survive, and so you find some maybe 3 feet, 1 meter, 2 meter lengths of limbs, maybe the size of your forearm, here and there, and you have plenty of rope. You could tie them together or do something. What's Gutorm's plan?
Yeah, and then you say Gutom, I'm taking all this stuff. I'm trying to drag them towards this big huge thing that Kai just and you see me like taking the thumbs together, having my fingers up and kind of taking some measurements of the thing.
Of the mound itself?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Of the Colossi.
Oh, of the Colossi. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably 15 feet tall, 5 meters.
Yeah. Hey, Kai.
Yes?
Do you think I could build an archery platform on this thing?
On Treehouse.
Yeah, almost.
As long as you get his permission. He's a good Colossi.
Yeah. Can you ask him?
Colossi, do you mind if the goblin stands on your back and shoots arrows at people that try to hurt us?
It just kind of looks at you like, but you don't necessarily get a verbal response. It just seems passive, Kai.
He doesn't care. You could do it,
Okay,
you could not do it.
So I tried to build this small platform, maybe on his back, behind its neck or something like that. Or
Yeah, I guess if you climb up and on the way down south towards the bridge camp, you could, start working on it.
I'm working on this.
Yeah, start working on it, or decide how you would do that, and you might have to wait until you're in a more, when the Colossi isn't moving. It's going to be a little bit hard for you to do that while it's moving. But if you climb up, which, the Colossi usually makes it, it might even reach down and pick you up. You're tiny, stick you on top of its head, and Gutorm may, start to try to figure out how he's going to build something. He's small, so he could practically just stand up there, but he might want to build something more stable that he doesn't necessarily
I
follow.
don't need anything big, just something small, a little bit stable to grab my hand on and stuff like that. So yeah.
How about we tie you to its forearm?
Your
And
dog
then
looks
when
at
it
you.
when a Colossi goes to punch, you could like shoot arrows, so it's like a rocket punch.
Gutto narrows his eye pretty much and looks at you, and you see my air just go backwards. No.
Okay.
Yeah, Gutorm could throw you like an arrow or, that sort of thing. So you guys go south. I keep messing that up.
That's a big one.
Yeah, I got to change the...
It's bigger than the freaking planet.
It's bigger than I expected. So you reach the Malgomor. Really, that is huge. You reach the Malgomor.
You've seen the pictures of them. There are people standing on their back.
Right. You go south, you follow your trail, which is no big deal, and you reach the Malgomor, and you start heading southwest along the Malgomor. By the time you get back and all this has encountered, it's probably just past midday, and you continue southwest until you start to see smoke, which you're coming towards the bridge camp along the way to Karvosti and south towards Thistle Hold and Jakar. It's spring, and so you kind of see smoke rising into the sky because it's clear as there's open sky above you since you're on the edge of the riverbank, and you're coming towards the bridge camp. Does anyone do anything as they approach the camp?
So
We have a faster pace. Now that we're mounted, sort of.
Say that again. I just missed it. Missed what you
I
said.
said, do we have a faster pace because we're mounted? In essence.
Yeah, in essence, you're riding this giant colossi, so the movement is probably double your speed, and you also have a mount. Everyone's mounted, really, and so your movement is a lot quicker. The colossi probably moves just as fast as a horse. Obviously, a horse, if it galloped, you're not quite sure if it could outrun the colossi, but the colossi is taking these huge kind of steps, and the horse is, cantering at times, walking at times, unless Kai kind of slows it down.
So we have this big monstrous entity with us, and we're about to walk into a camp. Should we not do that? I can just imagine us striding into a camp with this thing, and everybody going freaking nuts.
Well, this is a barbarian town, and the witches ride these things for miles across the plains.
I don't.
Sorry, reference. But, yeah, Kai would tentatively agree with that idea.
Is this the only place we can cross? Can't we just
Well, the Malgomor is pretty wide. Swimming across it in spring would be difficult. You could try, but it is pretty wide. It's 50, 70 feet, 20 meters wide. It's spring, early spring, so the current is pretty swift going into the Malgomor River. It's deep, and so Lothar would look at his horse, and he would know that would it would be a complicated swim. You could surely try it, but it would be a complicated swim, especially with all your gear and weight. Kai is somewhat correct that barbarians and Colossi are somewhat known, especially so close to Karvosti. It's not like it's a very common occurrence. Gutorm would tell you maybe he's seen one or two of them in his time at Karvosti show up, but it's not that witches haven't come to Karvosti on a Colossi, although witches are on the Colossi. You're on your horse, Lothar, and you kind of look up at them and you see an ambrian and a elf and a goblin riding a Colossi, and that strikes you as a little bit outside what would be expected, but not that Colossi themselves would cause any necessary, like, seeing a Colossi coming towards the bridge camp wouldn't necessarily cause, immediate, necessarily alarm. Like, obviously,
Right.
the guards at the bridge camp are there anyways, and they may respond, but it wouldn't be like I'm knocking my bow, and forming a line of combat. It's a Colossi. You're in barbarian lands, and you're so close to Karvosti, which is the seat of the High Chieftain Theraban. So it's
Okay.
it's something like that.
I know if I was just a lowly guard on a bridge and I saw some big, huge thing coming towards me, regardless, like imagine if I was, in modern times, just a guy watching a gate and a tank came rolling up, I would be concerned.
Yeah, roll cunning
There is
for me,
concern,
Lothar,
and
because
then
you are the
there is
barbarian.
trying to stop.
No one else may know this, so I would.
Yeah.
Kai will ask if anyone has a hood.
And Lothar, roll cunning, because you're the only one who would know this as a barbarian. Gutorm isn't going to know this. What were you saying? I did a little bit, but because it was hotter up here. Lothar, there is some concern. The bridge camp is under dual control of Ambrians and barbarians. There's generally wrath guards at the bridge camp. Hagen would know that there are also black cloaks and Ambrian guards. Whether there's Templars are there or not, it's he didn't see any last time. It's kind of a dual camp managed by both wrath guards and Ambrian guards. Lothar knows that it's a somewhat settled camp, especially in spring. It's going to be pretty busy with traffic and barge traffic from the Malgomor. You don't know what exactly you might meet there. There could be traveling treasure hunters. There's a lot of traffic between Karvosti and Jakar. There's also a fair amount of trade in Odavia, who act as guides for treasure hunters. It is the main way to get across the river, the Malgomor. A lot of boat traffic from the Malgomor, whether they're treasure hunters wanting to go far up the Malgomor, they're going to go that direction. If they just want to cross the Malgomor and they actually have horses or gear or that sort of thing, the Malgomor is a pretty big river. They're probably coming across the bridge camp. The bridge at
Does Karvosti have a port?
No, it doesn't have a port.
Just Jakar.
Just Jakar. And that's because Odavian's commercial attitude towards Ambrians. There's also a small bridge it's an ancient bridge of Symbaroum nation across the Eonor, right about here on the map. And so Hagen would know that too, but Lothar would kind of know the setup of the camp, that it is partially, there's one or two buildings that are always there, but it's mostly a tent camp. It's a lot of trade, a lot of treasure hunters, barbarians, and Karvosti. Well, Karvosti kind of turns a blind eye, but it is where treasure hunters cross. They most often have Odavian guides, even if the witches look askance at that, and the elves wish that wouldn't happen. It hasn't really been attacked by the Iron Pact.
Okay. I mean, I guess I'm not so concerned now that, this big giant thing's walking around with us. If it's even if it's not a normal sight. And Hagen's been here before, so I don't have to worry about him.
Right. So, Kai, you asked for a hood, which is probably easily made, or and you're approaching the camp of the bridge over to Malgomor. You can see from your vantage, there's numerous barges tied on either side of the bridge. The bridge is these huge logs that are lashed down to like pillars of or a step of stone, and they go over the Malgomor, and these huge giant trees are kind of on these stone, not pedestals, but like steps. And then there's like dirt ramparts that lead up to the bridge, but they're like 4 or 5 or 6 of these giant trees transit across. And then there's a small stone island in the middle that is a natural formation, and that's why that bridge is made in that part. But as you decide how to approach the camp, you can see that there's like 4 or 6 barges tied on either side of the bridge. You can see smoke from fires rising. You can see kind of the tent in the distance. How do you approach the camp?
Kai will put the hood up to cover the ears and sit knowingly on the back of good Colossus.
Pretend to be
Tell Hagen that he should probably walk. If anyone asks, we have business with the chieftain of Thistle Hold.
Okay. Hagen, does that sound like a good idea?
I'll walk ahead of the group.
Okay.
And I probably wouldn't share any information unless they questioned us.
All right.
Across.
So you dismount, climb down. You start climbing down, and the giant colossi just grabs you and, puts you on your feet next to it. Kai kind of flicks up his hood. He's going to pretend to be a witch. What does Gutorm do?
I'm standing on a colossi.
You're going to still ride.
Yeah.
All right.
It's far down.
All right. So you settle in next to Kai, or, on the other opposite shoulder.
Yeah.
Goblin riding high on the colossi. Hagen, you kind of step out front, or at least walking in front of the colossi, and Kai and Gutorm, who are riding the colossi. Lothar, what does Lothar or where do you have Lothar be and Butter be?
We're probably walking behind the colossi.
Okay. So Hagen first, the colossi, and then Lothar and Butterby, his horse, which is probably partially obscured because the colossi is so big. And that's how you kind of walk towards the bridge camp. Does anyone do anything else as you're moving towards there?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No, no.
So you approach the bridge camp, and you get closer and closer, and you can see this huge bridge spanning the Malgomor River, and these huge kind of logs. You see probably some traffic over the bridge. You know, it goes one way for a little bit, and then it seems like some wagons are halted, and it goes the other way. Like it's not a two-way, kind of bridge. You probably see a couple wagons. It's early spring, so trade is just starting. You see, maybe 3 or 4 barges lashed up on either side or anchored on either side of the bridge, like they're pulled close to the river edge on the north side, and probably have lines going off with stakes to hold them, from tailoring off in the current. And there's probably movement of goods around there. You see that the bridge camp is mostly a tent kind of city. You see, multicolored tents. You do see glint of armor, in the sunlight, in the late afternoon. And you approach kind of that northeast entrance. There's no like gates or anything, but obviously as you get closer and closer to the bridge camp, you attract the attention of the guards. And you see probably 6, 7 ambrians in plate and chainmail step forward, outside the border of the kind of tent camp, and maybe 1 or 2 wrath guards really they're off to the side a little bit. They're not out in front. The ambrians are kind of like seem to have taken charge, and as the Colossi and Hagen march towards the camp, and Hagen, you're up front, and you see this big burly woman up front with this huge axe over one shoulder. She's dressed in, piecemeal kind of plate mail, and has, very short blonde hair, and is probably 1 or 2 heads taller than you. And she just holds out her hand, and in the name of the queen, what are you all? Why have you come here? There's like some uncertainty as her eyes shift from Hagen towards the giant colossi before him, and she shifts back to the Hagen and says, Ambrian?
We have some business in Thistle Hold.
And what is that business? Do you have a license to be in the Davokar? Do you have a queen's license?
I might, right, Gene?
Yeah, I'll let you decide. Does Hagen have a license? Did he sneak in, or did he legitimately have a explorer's license? I'll let you decide.
I probably do have an explorer's
Okay.
license.
Yeah, you mean you're a cartographer?
Considering I'm a cartographer, yeah.
All right. So the woman says, well, then bring it out. Brother, bring it out and let me read it. Make sure it is legitimate. Her eyes keep flickering back up to her, and she kind of turns as you're maybe looking for your license and says, is that a goblin up there on top of that thing? And the man next to her just kind of nods her head. You think it's that one? And he goes, I don't know, ma'am. I don't know. Hagen.
I present the pass.
Yeah, she kind of looks at the license and checks the seal at the bottom and puts it up in front of the waning sun in the afternoon and looks at it, looks at the script and says, damn, it's legit, boys. And she kind of folds it back up and, all right then. And these are with you?
They are.
And they entered the forest with you from the south?
They did, yes. They're my bodyguards.
Yeah. Roll persuasion.
Watch your mouth now.
Yeah, you can see her look at you, Hagen. Bodyguards. And what is your employ then, Ambrian brother? What are you doing in the forest?
Is everything okay, boss?
I'm quiet down. I'm mapping.
Why is our guy talking to us like that?
I'm mapping. I'm mapping the wilds of this land.
What? And let me see some of your work. And while you're doing that, tell that goblin to come down so I may look at him. Or her. Is it a her or him?
Why do you need to look at said goblin?
She kind of looks at you and tilts her head a little bit. Then she looks at her axe. She looks at all the men behind her. And she goes, is that enough reason for you, Ambrian? And your name, please. I'm the guard of the bridge camp.
Start showing her some of the maps.
All right. And she kind of looks at the maps and squints her eyes a little bit. She goes, well, that's pretty work there. All right, then. Goblin, you, come down.
No.
She kind of yells up, witch, tell your slave to come down. I may look at him. We're looking for a goblin.
And I do this hand
to-
movement. I'm not the
point to
goblin you're looking for.
And like,
Say that again because it was just a mash.
I point at Gutom and like turn to him and go, why does she think you're a slave?
Me?
Yeah. Go down and like, after hearing what he had to say, I assume you're a better liar.
Okay, starting to climb down.
Good turn,
And
sir.
last thing I'm saying to Kai is like, keep an eye on me.
Kai, how close do you let the Karvosti? Does the Colossi just step up right behind Hagen, or do you keep him, a distance behind him? Where do you have the Colossi halt as you approach this guard kind of checkpoint?
It halted at a distance when it was just Hagen going up.
Okay.
But now that they're calling down Gutom, I'm gonna shuffle it forward to like using a hand to help Gutom get down.
Yeah, you.
Like, so it's close enough to hit these guards.
All right. So it's kind of
if they hurt
looming behind Hagen as Gutorm starts to try to climb down. It shuffles forward and it plucks Gutorm off like it's a bug. It grabs you and Hagen off, but Gutorm is such a tiny thing. It's almost like a ginger, careful, like it's watching Gutorm climb down and it's not quite sure because its hands are so big, and you just see it like pluck him off and like put him lean over Hagen and just drop Gutorm down, a couple steps in front of Hagen, and then kind of stand back up. Kai, make a discreet roll. Gutorm, you land, in front of Hagen, and this big Ambrian woman, takes her attention off of Hagen as she's looking at the maps, and then Hagen's kind of putting these maps over, and she looks down at you and she says, "What's your name, Goblin? And where are you from? And who are you traveling with? Have you been with them this whole time? Speak up now, speak up. Hurry up. Come on now, I don't have all day."
Gutom does a little in his throat, like getting ready, brushes up some dust from his shoulder, taking his time, and just moving around the belt and the quiver, making sure the arrows are all right. And
Like he's wasting time.
yeah.
She's huge, Gutorm. Like you're a couple steps in front of Hagen and you start fiddling with your bow and arrows and not answering her questions, and she's just big giant brute of a woman who's a guard, and she knocks you on the top of your head with her fist, like conk, 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 with Goblin. Did you not hear my questions?
It don't hit me.
She just kind of looks at, what's your name and have you been with them this whole time?
Yeah, I think you're being rude. I think you could ask me nicely instead of hitting me on the head.
You want to make a persuasion roll at
Yeah.
-2? So you start to give her lip, Gutorm, because that's what you're really doing, right?
Yeah.
And she's got like 7 guards behind her. She stands, 1 or 2 heads above, and you're from Karvosti. This isn't something that probably Gutorm doesn't understand. And she reaches down and grabs you by the front of your tunic and lifts you off the ground so that you're face to face, and just pulls you close enough, that you could look eye to eye. Now your feet are kind of dangling there, and she lifts you up off the ground. Lothar, you're kind of on the side. Your horse edges around the kind of colossi. You see Hagen, not dressed down, but questioned. And then, they tend to focus on the goblin Gutorm. You're not really certain why that is. Does Lothar do anything as Gutorm is picked up off the ground?
Yeah, so he hollers back. He's like, "Hey, can we hurry it up? I got wares to sell. This big hulking piece of tree bark is in my way. Let's move this along, huh?"
So you're pretending not to be with them?
Oh no, I'm with them.
Oh, okay.
I'm just yelling stuff to
All right.
go faster.
Kai, you're on top of the colossi. You feel this little bit of a shiver go through it. You see Gutorm get questioned. You don't have any idea why they're questioning Gutorm. Gutorm might know why they're questioning, but you have no idea. You see Gutorm, puff out against this huge ambrian guard. Does Kai do anything as he's lifted up off the ground?
I sort of nudge the colossi, returning to the position where the witch normally stands on the back of the colossi. I sort of nudge it. So there's the guard sort of looming menacingly over Gutorm, and then the colossi starts to loom menacingly back, and it's like, who's actually bigger?
Sure. Let's see what the colossi. 5. I'd probably make you a persuasion roll at +5, given the colossi's huge size and strength, just to see what happens. Hagen, do you do anything as Gutorm is lifted off his feet?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. The colossi kind of looms over you, and Gutorm, you're eye to eye with this huge guard. You're off your feet, almost as tall as your feet dangle, probably where your head would be, and she's looking at you, and then you feel a shadow over the top of you, and she looks up. You see her eyes just look up, and you see her face crinkle a little bit, and she then drops you on your feet and lets go. About this time, these 2 wrath guards that are kind of in the distance kind of push their way through a little bit through the crowd and stand up. You recognize one of them. You've seen her before. You know her name is Arona. Half her face is kind of missing, and you of the group are the only one left alive who know her, but you know her and you know she knows you because Gutorm has this connection with the Wrath Guards and has trained with them and taken care of their horses, and then developed a little bit of fame with them. And you see Arona's eyes kind of slide over you, Gutorm, as this giant Ambrian drops you to your feet. What happened when Gutorm was last here when they left Karvosti? Do you remember?
I don't quite remember that.
How did you get out the front gate?
We had a fight out the front gate, didn't we?
Yeah.
Sort of a fight. Yeah. I can't exactly recall what happened.
Yeah, you were with another barbarian who tried to flirt with one of the guards as you were going through the gate and just mashed it up. And then
Yeah.
then you had to put those two Templars to sleep, really. You bludgeoned them, and then what you had to do was you had to make it look like you fought your way out of the gate and got past the Wrath Guards. And so the two Wrath Guards who were there were like, you're going to have to knock us out. And so you knocked out those two Wrath Guards, and then the company kind of escaped Karvosti with the elf ambassador, Ari Loss, as you went
Yeah,
down.
I remember that now.
Right. And so, more than likely...
But did the reinforcement come close enough to see us before we left?
No, but you left those Templars alive.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously some sort of report, or eventually
Has to be made.
Ambrians may have start trying to hunt the group, which is completely, you're the only one left of the group. Kondu isn't here and the others aren't here. And so the only thing they really focus on is the fact that you're a goblin. The Wrath Guards may or may not have made a cursory or a feigned attempt to find you. Gutorm may consider that a possibility. You are absolutely sure that Arona knows who you are, and that you are the Gutorm who got past the gate and knocked out two Wrath Guards, which they told you to do because otherwise it wouldn't make sense. So as the
when she saw me, could I tell by the looks that she recognized me, or?
Oh yeah, Arona knows you. Like,
yeah,
you probably sparred with her.
But she's not showing it at this situation.
Yeah, she looks at you, Gutorm, and her eyes slide away like you're just nothing.
Yeah.
No look on her face. The other Wrath Guard looks at you and just kind of looks back up at the Colossi and peers a little bit. You see him peer a little bit up at Kai. Get this funny look on his face, and Arona makes the side and looks at the guard and says, "What's going on here?" Oh, actually, Arona is mute because part of her face is burned off, if you remember. And she makes some hand signals and taps to the other Wrath Guard. And the Wrath Guard kind of shrugs and looks at the Ambrian and says, "What is happening with this witch and her entourage?" He kind of says in a slightly slow passion. Does Gutorm say anything?
No, Gutorm stays silent.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Ambrian woman guardsman looks at the Wrath Guard and looks at Arona, and you see something kind of in her eyes a little bit, and involuntarily she makes like a half step away from Arona, and she looks at the Wrath Guards and says, "This may be the goblin we're looking for, the one who fought his way out of Karvosti in the front gate." who injured the Templars and your own Wrathguards. We should question all of them. Goblins are goblins, are they not? He kind of looks at it, and he shrugs and kind of looks at Arona, and Arona looks at her and taps her face, and shakes her head, and the other Wrathguard says, Arona says this is not the one. And the guard crinkles her eyebrows and kind of looks at Arona and looks at the Wrathguard and looks at Gutorm and says, Goblin, what is your name?
That's a total block. Gustav is sweating a little bit. And it's like it starts stuttering. It's little toad.
Little toad. Roll a persuasion check. Little toad.
Toad, what's taking so long?
A plain one? Or...
Yeah, just a plain one. I won't give you disadvantage. Yeah, she looks at you, little toad, and you see her lips get really thin, and Arona taps her chest, her breastplate, half her face is burned off. Her eye gets a little bit, and she looks she hasn't even looked at you, Gutorm, except for that one time, and she taps it again as the guard takes a step towards you, and then she rattles her kind of sword on her side, and the guard kind of stops and looks at the Wrathguard and says, we are done here then, but this one is lying. I will keep my eye on him. And you see her turn, this big woman, and she looks at all of them and says, back to the bridge. And they turn around and kind of march back towards the bridge.
Yeah, but Gustav, just before that, Gustav goes in between the legs of the Colossi, and he turns around to the ambrian. It's like, keep an eye on you too. While I'm pretty safe under the Colossi.
All right. You're kind of between the legs. The Colossi kind of looks down at you and, widens its step a little bit, like it's afraid it might squash you by mistake because you're so tiny. Kai, they don't seem to recognize that you're not a witch high up there with your hood on. You keep your face low and the words you say seem reasonable. You have a sense that the Wrathguards are a bit quizzical, but at least one of them is. The Wrathguard Arona and the other one, she snaps at him and makes a movement, and he kind of turns around and starts walking back, and she starts walking back, but right before she takes a few steps, she does stop and kind of looks back at Gutorm and just kind of winks at him and makes a movement towards her sword, pulls her sword like partly out and partly in. You hear it kind of nick back and forth in its scabbard, and then she turns around and leaves the party to enter the camp. Gutorm, do you do anything as Arona leaves?
I'm breathing out.
Sigh of relief.
Yeah, and try and climb back on to the shoulder of the Colossi.
Lothar, you are supposed to become a Wrathguard. Is there any markings or indication that you've been selected? Is there a way that initiates or selectees are marked before they come to Karvosti? Would the Wrathguards see that?
would think that there's some type of marking that is done. Otherwise, how would you know, right? Like, there has to be some kind of thing. Maybe it's a type of face paint. Like, I know the Shakar, they have like a half painted face in red, I think it is.
Yeah, that or like a seal, some sort of clay seal or something else that is marked that strikes them as true. Like when a chief sends you to Karvosti to become a Wrathguard, you come with their, it's not orders because they're barbarians, but you come under their guidance to dedicate yourself to Wrathguard as part of their clan, like they selected you. So you think the Wrathguards would have seen that when you were there?
Ooh, I don't know if they would have seen that because I'm in the back behind a freaking big tree.
Okay.
So unless they were really paying attention to me, I don't think they would have seen it.
Yeah, you get the sense that they may have glossed over you, but you were behind the Colossi, and their attention was trying to relieve Gutorm's stress at the moment. The company would know that they're looking for a goblin, and they obviously took very keen sense in investigating Gutorm, which is odd because he's just a goblin. Far more even than Hagen got with his maps. The company entered the bridge camp. The bridge camp has open space to tent or camp by yourself. It also has like one long house to rent cots. The Colossi is obviously going to garner a whole bunch of attention as you march into the camp. It's probably late afternoon. There's probably an hour before dark. What would the company's plan be as they enter the bridge camp?
I'd like to try to sell off this gear that we got.
Well,
Kai would have insisted on keeping like one of the sets of comparable to chain mail, scale mail, something comparable to scale mail.
okay.
That's what we got was scale mail.
Okay. He would have kept a set of that and given you a soot-covered, particularly beaten up set in exchange. That was the corpse of Ignatius. Sell him well.
Just tossed aside like used underwear.
Well, there is a bunch of barges and traders there. This is obviously early spring, so there is a fair amount of commerce. And so you could probably sell your gear at some sort of price to one of them that are heading south. It's unlikely you could sell it to someone that, looks like there is a large group of treasure hunters that are clustered around two of the barges that are on the east side of the bridge. And their camp is kind of spread out along the banks of the Malgomor, and they're not necessarily in the camp proper. You could potentially sell it to them, but it's unlikely.
Is there anyone with animals? Like,
You don't really see like Lothar's horse is one of the few horses.
okay, but there's no like trappers selling
No.
birds or anything.
Okay. You shout down and ask as you're walking through collecting this crowd of kids that are running around this giant Colossi.
Yeah. I would tell Little Toad, find me some birds. Live.
Little Toad, Kai wants you to go on a hunt. Do you comply? Gutorm.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Gutorm,
I
little
dropped
toad.
out.
Kai like leans over and he says, I need some birds, or find someone who has. Do they have to be alive, Kai?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
I
asking.
don't have
I was
the
about to ask
other
that.
ritual yet.
Okay.
Okay, so you want me to catch live birds?
If someone has them for sale, I mean, I have, and he'll look through his pouch and go, I have some seeds, and
Okay.
Should I go try
I've
and
got
trap
some
some
ink,
birds?
and
So you.
I'm assuming we'll get some money for selling if we try and sell the loot. And did I steal a thaler from the witch's corpse before?
Yeah, you could.
Earlier.
So
Yeah,
Gutorm, little toad,
So-
you like climb down the Colossi, and you got all these kids around you, and noise, and people watching. It almost looks like the witch is giving you a command, and
Oh, there's kids around.
yeah, there's like like if you ever walk through a village like this, like they immediately, like there's kids running around, at least a number of them, 10, 12, and as you descend, they're obviously, some of them are taller than you, but they're obviously young barbarians. None of them are
Hey,
ambrian.
Kai, how many birds do you need?
yeah, as many as you can get. I did give
I'm
Gutorm
saying to the kids, like 1 shilling for each live bird you can catch.
You want live
Yes,
birds,
yeah.
Goblin? Well, you should see Baya. The camp witch. I don't know if she's in the right clan or not, but I don't know which clan, why a witch would be here. She's not part of the whole, but Baya, the camp witch, has birds. He has lots of things. We don't go there very much, though, but,
Can you show me the way?
he kind of looks at you and goes, pass through the camp on the edge of the forest. That's where her tent is. You see it and hear it because of the bones and trinkets.
Hey, Kai, are you willing to pay for the birds?
Yes, I mean,
Okay.
just gave you a thaler to go get.
1 tailor?
I have no idea what money is.
I'm looking at this 1 tailor and I'm like, okay. I guess
the kid
Gutorm
looks at it
has
and
some
goes,
idea about money.
If you give me that little coin, I could take it to Baya.
I gave the kid the coin.
Oh,
All right, then.
okay.
Follow me. And he goes running through the camp,
Yeah, I'm running after the kid.
Kai, what do you do? What do you and the Colossi do as Gutorm goes running after this kid to fetch you birds? Are you following, or are you finding some other spot to settle the Colossi? You're getting a whole lot of attention.
I'm finding a spot to settle the Colossi near the edge, like, so that it doesn't step on any kids. Because
Sure.
they are underfoot everywhere, I'm assuming.
Well, it's like something new that comes up. Colossi doesn't show up right away.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm probably readjusting our packs and things like that into a Colossus backpack.
Okay. Can you roll me a vigilance test? Hagen and Lothar, the company wants to sell some things. What does Hagen do as he enters the camp? He's been here before, but just passing through.
Really nothing in particular.
Okay.
Stand by watching them try to make a sale or two.
Right. Gutorm goes running off. Kai kind of goes tromping through. You see, eyes are watching them. A couple of kids are running around you, and one grabs you and kind of, tugs on your side, and she looks up at you and says, "Hi, Ambrian, you're strong, yes?"
No, I just look strong.
Well, that's just as good. It keeps you out of trouble. That's what my daddy says. You just have to look strong. Well, here's the thing. We littles, we found some treasure. We're just too small to get it. If you get it for us, we'll share. How's about a deal?
Where might this treasure be?
Well, are you in? It's just downriver a little bit by the swallows, or the swallow. What's that word? Ambrian word. Where it's not as deep.
Shallows.
Shallows. Okay. Yeah, by the shallows.
So what has stopped you from being able to collect this treasure?
And she kind of looks at you, and she looks at her, and she looks at her, and she goes, "Well, we're small. We don't want any of the other adults to get it."
Well, you're small, but is that because there's something bigger stopping you from getting it? Or you just can't reach it?
She kind of looks around. How? Well, it's just in the shallows, in the mound, the beaver mound. And you're not quite as big as, well, some of barbarians. She kind of looks you up and down. But you're big, just, not quite as big. And you look smart. She looks at your satchel, looks at your kind of armament. So,
and Gutorm ran off, right?
Yeah, Gutorm ran off. But if you're in, and you go to the swallows with us, I come get you, just right after dark. And you can
Shallows.
have shallows. Yeah, the shallows, and then you can have half. We just don't want to get in any trouble. Parents.
I'll ask Lothar if he wants to come along.
All right, then we're look out to you. I'm Alina. She kind of looks at her hand, and this is right? She offers it to you. What Ambrians do? Her hands are like, her fingers are like splayed out, but they're really tiny because she's maybe 10.
And filthy.
Yeah, filthy. She's like, well, she is Ambrian. She has sticks in her hairs, and
yeah.
You shake her hand, Hagen?
Yeah, I shake her hand.
Right. Hagen's kind of like bartering with this 10-year-old girl, barbarian girl, talking to about treasure down river in the shallows. And Lothar, you're up on the horse, and you are approached by 2 or 3 barbarians, and they kind of nod up at you and says, "Brother, you've come from the east, outside up to Malgomor, yay?"
Aye.
Yeah, it's good. Good, then you're Sahar, aren't you?
Of course.
Yeah, roll me a vigilant at +2. The barbarian looks at you and goes, yeah, I'm a carrot, and we've lost one of our sisters. You haven't seen a witch, have you? And he kind of looks over his shoulder, and another Colossi, not like that one though.
I mean, might have passed him in travels somewhere up north, by the Sun Temple or something.
Oh, straight north then, all the way to the Sun Temple. You're from that area, traveled.
I came through that area. Maybe that's where I saw that Colossi.
Roll.
Don't know about the witch.
I think that's persuasion. Roll persuasion. You like that number,
217s, yeah.
right? You see his brow crinkle a little bit, and his diction breaks a little bit. Lothar, the way he says words breaks, and he kind of looks at you and he says, "Are you sure of that, brother?" And there's just enough saw lilt to it, Lothar, that you realize that this Odavian is not Odavian, but he is from your clan.
Well, like I said, I think that's where I saw him. Can't be for sure. Wasn't really paying attention to witches and stuff. But I suggest you go up to that area and look. Maybe you'll find what you're looking for there.
Kind of nods and, well, I'm going south for trade. Really? Which direction are you headed?
Southeast.
Well, we might be on a road then, he says. His eyes are really, really straight. His face is flat. We might meet on the road then, somewhere. And he kind of turns around and walks away and collects the two others with him, and leaves you. Hagen and Lothar, are you planning to go together to sell the equipment?
I don't know about Hagen. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if he wants to go, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely going.
Do we have a list for that?
There was 3 scale mills and 2 of the double axes, from my memory. I might be wrong though, because there were 6 of them, but most of them got, a couple of them got squished.
Well, that's right. There were a couple of them got squished.
All right.
Yeah, and there was one chain mill, but you didn't tell us if it was good or not. I don't remember its condition.
There was probably. Who's doing the talking?
Remember, one of the scale mills has been swapped out for a slightly battered, soot-covered one.
Right.
Yeah.
Would Hagen or Lothar barter?
Are we talking to barbarians or ambrians?
You could talk to either. There's Odavian traders and barbarian traders. I mean, Odavians and Ambrian traders that are headed south to the Volgoma. You don't expect that although you could try, that the Ambrian treasure hunters would necessarily take on more gear, but it's possible. So you have your choice, really.
I think my persuasion is a little bit better than Hagen's.
It probably is. Actually, pretty guaranteed that it is.
Yeah. Not better by much, but I'll try to do the negotiating, I guess.
All right. Like you're kind of swinging by the treasure hunters, and you might make a query, and they just wave you on. Like they don't need any more burden. They don't need any more weight. You can tell like their barges are kind of laden at it as it is, and they just kind of shake your head, and they're not in the mood. If I would have whichever one of you roll persuasion, and we'll see what percentage you get, and you can do that, and then we're figure it out.
Oh, by 1.
You didn't fail that. You didn't fail too bad. I think you probably get about 70% of the cost.
Okay.
And so you can just look up and see, or I'll look up later and see how much you get. But I think as Kai is settling the Colossi, probably outside of tent range or outside, and Gutorm is running, following this kid. Hagen and Lothar are trying to offload their equipment, or get some cash, get some thaler and some coin by selling it. Gutorm, you follow this kid outside of the camp. You kind of weave in and around.
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Before you break into that, the witch that you mentioned, Belaga or whatever.
Baya, yeah.
Baya, is that the same person we ran into in the Misty thing with the husband and the kids? Wasn't she a witch or something?
No. Which
No?
part?
Oh, I can't remember. I remember we was walking through the forest and there was this like mist, and we had to not look back and escape the mist. And there was a husband with a cart and some kids. I thought that was the name of the wife.
No. I don't remember her name, but I don't think it was Baya. But I remember you were coming up the road, and but she wasn't a witch. She was just his wife.
Oh, she wasn't? Oh, okay.
No. She was just his wife, and he was a poor trader with a single cart, and they had been robbed outside of, Davokar, south of the Eonor River. And that was actually the other group.
It's so hard to remember the difference.
The other day, right? It was the other day. Baya is the kind of camp at the bridge over to Malgomar's, which Gutorm, you're weaving in and out of the tents following this boy running, because you just gave him a thaler and had no idea what that was worth. And, he kind of looks over his shoulder and he's trying to outrun you. And you kind of break the camp barrier, and then you're kind of running through tall grass towards the edge of the forest, the edge of Davokar. And then you kind of hear it, this kind of tinkling sound, and you see this tent just in the shade of kind of the forest, this multicolored tent. And the boy stopped probably 100 feet, 30 meters from the tent. He kind of looks at you and says, there she be, goblin. Is this as far as I go?
All right. What about Taylor?
He kind of looks at you and goes, what about Thaler?
Go ahead. Go off, kid.
He thought he was being paid. He goes, well, be careful. I heard she eats children. And he kind of looks you up and down and goes, I'm a little bit taller than you. She might be mistaken.
I eat children too. Goblins do that, right?
He laughs. You want to take me on?
All right, come on. I drop my quiver, I drop my bow, and I put them up both my fists.
You're going to fight this 11-year-old boy in the field outside of Baya's
We're
camp.
both the same height, aren't we?
Right. You're both about, he's maybe just a little bit taller than you. Not really all that much taller than you.
Can I just tackle him, get him to the ground, and throw him an extra shilling, and just...
Sure you can. You can make a quick test. Minus 2.
I want to just tackle him, throw him to the ground. I don't want to hurt him or anything like that. I just kind of...
Make a quick test at -2. Oh. He just dances away from you. You like sprawl out, like you dive to try to catch him, but he just like does almost like a jump and a splays his leg out. You go right underneath him, and he kind of drops and steps on your bottom and tucks away, and then runs towards the camp. Good luck, goblin. Thanks for the thaler. He keeps running.
I put my fist in the air and screaming after him. Run, boy. I'm gonna give the witch some food.
What does Gutorm do? Does he go towards the tent?
Yeah.
All right. You come towards this tent. It's a low tent, though, like shorter than most tents. And it's kind of drab. It was multicolored at one point, but now it's lost that kind of luster of its color. It's kind of faded. There's a little bit of tears here and there. There's branches that have been stuck in the ground that, are denuded of their leaves. And in those branches are all these bones, little tiny bones hung up in arrangements by little strings, and they kind of clink against each other as you approach the flap of the tent.
Almost like dream catchers or something like that.
Yeah, they're just tiny little bones. You kind of peer at them, and you're not really quite sure if they're finger bones or not. But then you realize, no, it must be something else. They can't be human. You peer again, make sure they're not children, goblins, but you're almost positive they're, lizards, birds, fowl, something like that. What does goblin?
Yeah, I think I want to approach it carefully because can I see anyone around there?
Now you probably hear, some mumbling from the inside the tent, clanking, a little bit. There's a little bit of smoke just coming out of the top.
Yeah, I'm closing up to the tent and I'm looking at the ground, finding some branch I can step on so it cracks just to make some noise that I'm approaching.
You just want to make yourself known.
Yeah.
Yeah, you step on this big branch on purpose. Maybe you just stomp down on it, makes this big crack sound, and you hear this, kind of mumbled shout. And then, the flap opens up and this old woman's face, with gray hair that's kind of in a mass, all around it. And she kind of looks out at it and she goes, What do you want?
Hello, lady. Do you have some live birds for sale?
Live birds. Will you eat some?
Yeah.
Who's
It's
it?
not for me.
Not for you. Then who's it for?
It's for my new friend Kai.
Your new friend Kai. What's it? What is her? What is Kai?
I just want to buy some live birds and I'll be off my way and I won't interrupt you anymore. It seems like you're really busy around here.
She kind of looks at you and she goes, I must see this Kai before I give birds. Would you give your birds to someone you did not see?
You can give the birds to me.
She kind of looks at you and goes, not for you, goblin. You save for Kai.
Oh, god damn it.
You want to try to persuade her to give them to you without following
Yeah.
you?
You can sell the birds to me. I buy the birds, they're for me. And maybe I sell the birds to Kai.
Now you lie. Do I look stupid?
No.
No.
And inside my head I say yes.
You see the flap kind of close, and you hear this rumbling, and she comes out with like 3 cages. There's like 2 birds in each cage, and she goes, "Are you ready? Take me to this Kai. I see if it's worthy." She's like dressed in this kind of sewn in stuff, patched all over the hem of her dress. You can smell her from where you are. She's unlike any witch you've ever seen before. She, looks down on her luck, but she has birds in wooden cages that look like she built them by hand.
Well, Kai is this way. You want me to carry one of the cages for you?
She looks down at you. Right. And she hands you all 3 of them. You manage, little thing.
But she wasn't the only 3 she had.
Yeah, she had 3 cages. She's handing you all 3 of them. Go on. Don't try anything.
Yeah, I'm taking all the cages. I have one under my arm, keeping one in my hand and another in the other hand. I'm showing her the way to Kai.
Right. So you stumble with, the cages are about, a foot or
I
don't know.
imagine I struggle a little bit with these cages.
Yeah, you're struggling with the cages. The birds inside are squawking. One pecks at you from between the pages. You got one that has a crow in it, and two others that have like, pigeons. And then there's a third that has like, smaller cage with very kind of smaller reeds that have like 3 yellow finches in it. And you start meandering your way back to the thing. And as you're meandering, she like taps you on the back. Not so fast. Baya can't move that fast, and she like whacks you with her like her cane. Quack. Slow down, Goblin. What is your name?
Little Toad.
Little Toad. Who named you? She kind of looks at you. Let me see your eyes.
And I look her into her eyes.
I'm gonna make a roll because I don't know if she's gonna do this on her own. She looks down at you and she goes, Little Toad is not your name. Nope. It is. Nope. It is Torm. Oot. Torm Oot. No, that's not right. I get it. As we walk, I get it. Oot. Torm.
Old lady. My name is Kuthon, but you have to keep the name quiet around here.
Oh, it's a secret. Well, that will cost extra. Then she laughs to herself. Don't worry.
Kuthon just rolls his eyes in annoyance.
Right. She laughs and she goes, don't worry. Nothing is for free. No one's going to ask me to pay to know your name. Goblin, you're safe. And
yeah, but lady, you actually have to pay me to carry these cages.
She kind of looks at you and says, nope, you already started to carry them. You didn't ask for payment before you accepted them. And such as the deal. That's how it works.
Well, nothing's for free, and I put the cages down.
She looks at him and she picks them up, Gutorm, and she says, well, no birds then for Kai. And she turns around and starts walking back to her.
Come on, lady. Give me the cages. I carry them for free.
Okay.
Have you, Kai?
Yeah, nothing's for free, right? Little Toad. You bring her back to Kai. Kai, where have you found a place for your Colossi? You're muted if you...
Okay, so it will be on the edge of camp. Like he was probably trying to.
Sure. I think you could probably... I think you probably are on... there's the river and then the camp, and the edge of camp is going to be like closer to Davokar anyways. And it's probable that Gutorm sees you. Like, the Colossi isn't something to miss, especially if you're going on the edge of the camp or so. So the only way you could really go is to go kind of north, on the edge of the camp, Yeah.
Yeah, he's as closest to the road as they can get set up.
Okay. So Gutorm, you see Kai and you see the Colossi really first. The Colossi is probably sat down, and eventually, interest in it wanes a little bit. And so Kai is able to kind of find it, on the border of the camp near the bridge, but, outside towards Davokar. And you see the Colossi first, and maybe angle toward it. And the witch Baya says, wait, Goblin. Where we go?
We're going to meet Kai.
And she kind of points her, crooked kind of old arm, her fingers kind of gnarled, and says, Kai with Colossi.
Yeah.
She kind of stands up straighter, and then she like lays her cane down and like, like brushes herself off. Gutorm like brushes herself off and like pulls her hair back thing and pulls out, one of the thing and tucks it behind her ears. And she looks at it, she goes, "How I look then?" Colin, be
You look
honest,
fine.
Goblin.
You look fine, but I don't think Kai would like to see me carrying all this stuff for free.
She kind of looks at you and laughs. He goes, "You lie. At least about one of those things." And she says, lead the way to our witch. I would like to meet this Kai witch and his Colossi, or her Colossi, or their Colossi. It has been a long time since I have conversed with one of my own."
It starts to get into Gutov's mind that this can be a problem.
He dawns on it like, oh.
Yeah, something like that.
There's a little change in his face where it, filters into his ear, which he goes, "Hi, I'd like to meet one of my own. It's been a long time." And then
it was the one like my own. I was like, you want me to pay for the birds right here now? How much you want for the birds?
Yeah, you just have her gnarled hand on, she puts her gnarled hand on your shoulder as you're carrying the 3 bird cages, and there's just a lot of weight on you as she's like, needs you to help her because now she doesn't have her cane. And she goes, "When we get close, I let go, but I need you for now. Keep walking me to your witch. How long has she owned you?"
For about 6 months.
"Twa. It is a long time to be in her employ. Does she pay you well?"
Yeah, he treats me well. She treats me well.
"Well, that is good then. You should not be treated poorly, Goblin. No matter of what you are born and what you will become. Come now, let's meet them." He just kind of leans on you, and you get maybe, you're probably going to get close enough, but as soon as you start to be able to see Kai, she goes, "Okay, that's enough." And she like shoves you away so she could like walk on her own, even if it's difficult. Does Gutorm do anything as he approaches Kai with 3 bird cages tucked in his arms?
If the witch doesn't see me or whatever she is, I'm trying to give some hand signals to Kai.
Like you could probably be walking in front of her. She's following you, and she's old and she needs her cane, but now she doesn't have it. And she doesn't have a goblin to lean on it. So you might be able to make it to Kai before she gets there, and she probably yells.
Oh yeah,
at
I start to walk faster. Then.
Right, she probably yells at, "Slow down, Goblin! Goblin!"
Yeah, I'm speeding up.
As you get closer to Kai, she's gonna like lay off because she doesn't want to be yelling at you as you're approaching a witch.
And I'm coming with all the cages, and I'm like, Kai.
Kai, you see Gutorm and this old hag behind them. Probably by 20 feet now, 7 meters or so, and Kai makes your side. He's trundling along with these 3 cages. One has a crow and 2 pigeons and like 3 finches. And you see Gutorm hurrying up next to you, and you look over him. You see this hag. The giant colossi just kind of shifts its head a little bit and looks towards their direction. What does Kai do?
How long were they gone for?
Probably long enough. Like Hagen and Lothar are still like haggling, so it hasn't been that long. 45 minutes, hour and 15 minutes maybe. Like they run out there, they get the old hag. Like it hasn't necessarily been that long. Lothar and Hagen are just probably starting to haggle and find which merchant they're gonna deal with, and so it hasn't been very long at all. I mean, it's dusk now probably, and
Okay. Assuming it's been like roughly an hour since
yeah, I could say that.
Stuff, and everyone left with their to go sell the stuff. asks Gutorm, and by a shuffling forwards, Kai looks up from this set of armor, ready to wave Gutorm off, and like, oh, just 1 second, and he will sort of breathe
Oh,
into
just
it
Kai.
as fire starts bellowing out, and the next friend
So you
enters the world.
you cast Flaming Servant.
I perform the Flaming Servant,
Okay.
which should not be dead.
Yeah, I fixed it. Did you change the
It's
picture? Oh, you put one in. That
I
looks,
changed the picture.
yeah, it looks great.
Amber
So
joins the party.
you cast Flaming Servant as just as Gutorm makes your side. Gutorm, you make his side. You're about to rattle off something, and poof, this Flaming Servant, materializes out of the armor. Like it stitches itself together, and you see it kind of clank and suddenly move and get form and stand up next to Kai. Kai, you look and a little bit dazed, and the fire in the Flaming Servant dies down. So it's not usually on fire unless it's in combat. There's just a little bit of smoldering in its eyes. And Gutorm meets your side. You had looked over and seen this hag walking towards you, and you see her stop. Probably at 15 feet, 5 meters,
Damn.
5 meters away. Gutorm, as you meet Kai's side and see the Flaming Servant form, what do you say to Kai, or what happens?
It is the first word I say. And Kai, the the hag, she thinks you're one of them.
But I am clearly not a woman. How could I be a hag?
I think we might run into some trouble here, but I have the birds. You have to pay for the birds, and the lady wants to talk to you. I think you should put your hood on.
Kai has not put his hood down the entire time. He is.
Oh, you have your hood on?
Yeah, he's aware that
Well, I do
humans
whisper
are a
it
little
to
bit
Kai.
racist.
He thinks you're a witch because of the Colossi. What are we gonna do?
Say hello and buy some birds.
Well, here are the birds, and I just drop the cages in front of Kai.
Don't drop them. You might break the cages.
Yeah, you guys. There's a moment, the hag doesn't move at all, and Gutorm, you see her look over her shoulder, and then you see her shake her head a little bit, and then turn back around and move her head, and almost she's settling herself, and she comes walking towards you and Kai, a slight limp on her right leg, and that's why she was leaning on you. So she takes her time to kind of get there because she's old, and she looks down at you and says, "Goblin, this is your witch?" And then she looks at the Colossi and blinks and looks back down at you.
Well, I didn't exactly. Yeah. Well, I didn't lie to you
Kai, do you say
about everything.
Kai, do you say anything?
A witch? Forgive the goblin. they're kind of not always the most intelligent. I am. And at this, Kai sort of like looks around, then leans in a bit closer. One of those invested in ensuring the darkness does not take over the forest.
Yeah, you see her look at you, Kai, like, and she snorts. And then she reaches out and, like, puts one hand on the Colossi. And then, for just a moment, like, she's just touching the Colossi moves its huge head toward her. And then she lets go, and she picks up all her cages. The goblin isn't the most stupid thing here. And she turns and starts to walk away. Do Kai or Gutorm do anything?
I look to Gutorm and ask him, what was that about?
That was next time you go buy your own birds.
Right. You just see the buy of the
And I
witch.
started running after the old hag.
You run after her? What do you do when you make her side? She just kind of looks down at you and, what do you want? Keeps walking, just dragging her one leg.
Can I still buy the birds?
No,
Why?
because wrongness.
Because it's an answer.
Wrongness. She stops and she looks at you and, like, there's just sadness. Gutorm, she just looks at you with sadness. And she turns and she goes, look there. What do you see?
Yeah, Kai,
And what else?
Colossi.
Yes. Now, that right or wrong?
I don't really know because
Problem.
the Colossi seems quite friendly.
She kind of looks at you and goes, if I make you stand by me and you have to do it, is that right or wrong?
I guess that could be wrong.
Now, you carry these cages back to my tent or I do it.
You paying me?
She looks at you and she smiles. What do you want for it? And she laughs a little bit despite how her
Two
eyes look.
tailors.
2 tailors.
One
carry
cage,
bird cages.
One bird cage.
You must think I'm stupid as elf. And she kind of walks. She grabs up her, keeps walking out. You go back to him. Maybe he control you too.
Well, I turn my back to the hag and I go back to Kai.
All right. So Hagen, Lothar, they sell their gear to a barbarian tradesman. They get a fair amount of coin. It's going to be dark. Did the company have a plan to meet up?
I don't
I
think we
figured
had.
we would just look for the big colossi in the
Right.
camp.
Okay.
and-
So you'd kind of just converge on the colossi.
yeah, it's kind of like, what do you call it? A sounding pole or the guiding light.
Right. Now, would you make camp there? It's spring, and so it's not like you have to have a tent or go to a long tent or, buy a cot. You could surely camp.
Guto wanna do something.
Okay.
Guto wanna walk. I walk over to the Colossi. And I want to look at it in its face. And I want to touch it.
Sure.
To see if I can understand something what the hag was meaning. What she was talking about.
Yeah, so Gutorm, you go up to the hag, you go up to the colossi as you see Lothar and Hagen in the distance, they probably notice you, and you can tell the way they walk. You've been with them long enough, just the canter of their step, that it's Lothar and Hagen, it's not someone else. And you go up to the Colossi. The Colossi is just kind of sitting down. Its legs are out in front of him, splayed out, and it's just kind of sitting there. But the head is way up above you, still, because it's 15 feet tall. So the head is still probably at 8 feet. And Gutorm's kind of small, and you kind of walk up between the legs of the Colossi, and it's just kind of sitting there. Nothing.
Yeah, so I want to look at it. I want to touch it, and I want to ask, "Are you sad?"
Right. Doesn't move. It's just sitting there staring out into the space. No response, really. It might kind of look down at you for a moment and then look back up.
Oh well. I turn around, shrug my shoulders, and move to meet the others.
Sure. Kai, do you do anything as all this is transpiring? You see Gutorm kind of step up and look up at the Colossi. You don't really know what anything has been said between the Witchbaya and Gutorm, and he's kind of looking up at there. The Colossi doesn't really move. Does Kai do anything?
He will look at it and go, I assume that was some witchy thing. I would appreciate it, and this is not an order, if you did communicate with me when you have problems.
Are you talking to the Gutorm or the Colossi?
The Colossi.
Yeah, you just kind of, its big head kind of swivels to you, and you just get this feeling of wellness, Kai. Like, you're talking to it, and you have this sudden feeling of otherwise wellness. Like, it feels well. You have this connection with the Colossi. You would feel if it was uncomfortable or in pain, or there's a momentary kind of flutter there, but then the ensnare rune, the enslave rune is active, and there's this little drift a little bit, but then it snaps back towards you, and you kind of get this feeling of blank wellness from the Colossi itself, which is the same feeling you get from Amber or the spider or that sort of thing. The only time Kai gets other feelings is if it, and he's never really felt it from the spider or Amber or probably other things, is nothing ever breaks from it. So he doesn't really, he feels momentarily when they're lost, like that last moment right before they are vanquished or die, or when the armor no longer was active. There's a momentary feeling of I don't think disgust is the right word. It's more like animosity, but it's just briefly right before the fire spirit of the armor goes away, and the spider, you didn't really feel much at all. Would you all camp there as a group?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Lorik, what time is it?
It is 12:10.
Okay. About stopping time.
About stopping time, yeah.
All right. What we'll do is we're stop there right at camp, rather than me create a cliffhanger right before you leave. I don't think I could do that with the remaining time. I don't think I could do that well with the remaining time. Certain things will happen, obviously. But we're stopped there. You're camp for the night, with, I expect, plans to go south along the road towards Thistle Hold, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Does anyone have questions for me?
done
All right.
immediately.
A little bit different session today. There was
Yeah.
combat. There was combat in there. There was combat in there that could have happened. It's just that you guys decided on certain decisions that didn't require it, and so
Yeah.
and sometimes that happens. Hopefully you had fun. I had fun. There was other exploratory things that I leave it completely open. Obviously, when you get to the mound and that sort of things, you guys could have taken a lot of different actions, and so hopefully you all had fun. I had a fair amount of fun today. Any comments otherwise?
I like the shallows. the kid. I thought that was
Yes.
funny.
Yes. That was an amusing
Yeah,
note
very
on the
amusing.
difficulties of language.
And you know what's funny is it just happenstance. It's just I make a mistake and then I roll with it. I didn't really plan it that way, but when I said swallows, I just leaned into it. So, and then it became, a language thing, which was fitting. It was pretty funny.
And for Guttorm's case, I kind of liked the approach with the witch. I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Carrying the cages. So yeah, that was fun.
I only had a couple of things that were really set, and that was Guttorm at the beginning with the Wrath Guards. The rest were just deciding at what people decided they wanted them to know. Kai would feel that he's been spotted, just so he knows as he's moving through that there's darker eyes upon him. Lothar and Hagen, Lothar would know that there's SARs in camp, and every now and then he sees the barbarian who's just watching them just a little bit too closely, and I think the company would know that there's a small degree of interest or animosity or something. Obviously, Guttorm doesn't understand necessarily if Baya has any intent, but she's obviously unhappy. I think you would know that, just so when we pick up next week, you would understand that part.
Yeah, I don't think Guttorm is really good at reading people and situations until he knows it's time to run.
Right? And that was a complete setup for you, Guttorm. To be frank, I had no idea how I was going to work the witch in. None at all, until Kai wants you to go find birds. Now, there's no way for me to know that Kai is going to want you to go find birds. I have no idea.
Still fun.
Right. And then okay, that's the best way for me to feed the witch in. Like, he goes, who's going to have birds? Yeah, the crazy herbal witch on the outside of camp. She's crazy to begin with. He's got to go see her. And then, that whole part is just made up because of the decisions that you guys make. And same thing with Hagen and Lothar. When I ask those questions, if you can be seen by a Wrath Guard or if you have a license, I'm just deciding what you're going to tell me, what's going to happen, and go from there.